Hello everyone, this is Eric Matisoff with Adobe, and I'm the evangelist for analytics and data science here, and I'm excited to be walking you all through some really powerful data visualizations that we can do within Analysis Workspace. Over the next hour, I'll be walking you through not only just what some different visualization capabilities are, but also how to use them along with how to actually get them set up within Analysis Workspace. Thank you for joining. If you're trying to figure out how things work, let me give you a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar is actually in a listen-only mode. That way we just kind of don't end up interrupting each other and everyone's trying to talk over each other. It'll work out really well that way. But within the Adobe Connect webinar, we do have a Q&A chat pod, and you'll see that right on your screen. So as you have questions about what I'm going through, feel free to ask questions there. Keep in mind, I'm actually not going to be able to answer them right away because I'm both owning the content that's being shared along with answering those questions. So we're going to try and answer them as quickly as possible, but I've reserved some time at the end of the webinar to answer those questions. Now, if there are any questions that end up not getting answered due to time or other reasons, we actually have the email addresses that you registered with for this webinar, so we can respond directly back to you. So don't worry if we run out of time for whatever reason and we're unable to answer your question. Certainly we will get back to you as well over email, so don't worry. In addition, since we're going to be going through a ton of content here, we really have a packed hour. We'll be sharing a recording of this webinar soon after the webinar is complete, within the next few days or within the next week. And so you'll get that over email as well. So it's another way that you can scroll through and see the latest and greatest that we're walking through, if there's anything that you missed or if there's something that you want to rewatch. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, please fill in and provide your feedback. We're going to have some polls available that really help us just make sure that we're making the most of these sessions, the most of your time. We have some questions regarding what other topics you'd like to see as well. So do stick around for those polls, and keep in mind we read every single response, so don't hesitate to give us your feedback, be it positive or negative, of course, however you feel. Great. So with that, and we're a couple minutes into the hour, so I'd like to jump in. As I mentioned, the focus for today is really going to be around data visualization and data specifically within the Analysis Workspace tool. Now, hopefully you were able to join our previous Analytics Tuesday webinar where we did an overview of the Analysis Workspace tool. Keep in mind that that recording is still available today if for some reason you need to go back and check it out. We're also actually working on pushing all of these webinars to our YouTube channel. In fact, if I have one recommendation for you after today, it's definitely to spend some time continuing to learn. And one of my favorite places to do that is actually on our YouTube channel. And so if you just do a quick Google search of YouTube Adobe Analytics, you'll find our channel. And we've got tons and tons of different videos that walk through really in just 2 to 5 minute clips about different topics, different features. Every time we have a release that has some new features, we want to show off those different features within a YouTube video as well. So I highly recommend checking it out. And in the very near future, we're just kind of cleaning up all the different videos. You should see these webinar recordings in there as well. So, as I mentioned, the focus today is data visualization. And so let me start with just kind of talking through my feelings around data visualization and how it interacts with actually telling stories using data. And so based on the way that we've been working within data since back in the Omniture and Superstats days and all the way through today within Adobe Analytics and our other great products within the Experience Cloud, we basically see that there's three different pieces when it comes to telling stories using data. There's the narrative, there are the visualizations, and then, of course, obviously, there's the data. And when all three combine, we're looking to influence business decisions and therefore helping to inspire action and change. At a high level, I think this framework is a very helpful and useful way to understand data storytelling, but I'd like to drill a little bit more into those different components. So if we were to just take a look at the Venn diagram, of course we're using a Venn diagram because we're talking about visualizations with data. If you were to combine just simply narrative and visuals, then the goal there is with those two, you're trying to just simply engage the audience emotionally. And so that's the goal of those two when they're combined. Next up, we have data and visuals. So when you're combining those two, you're really empowered to essentially enlighten the audience with some new insights. But without that narrative applied to it, then you're missing the full opportunity. And then the last piece of that Venn diagram is going to be when you're using narrative and just simply data but no visualizations, then you're just kind of explaining the data, but you're missing out on the opportunity to visually show what's happening. And so when all three are combined, that's where you really get the opportunity to influence change using data stories. And you can do that, of course, using my favorite tool, Analysis Workspace. If you haven't been in Analysis Workspace ever or just not recently, I highly recommend starting to do your analysis there. It's the latest and greatest and most powerful way to leverage Adobe tools to understand what's happening behaviorally on any of your digital experiences, which includes websites along with apps and OTT apps, as well as just literally anything that has an internet connection that you can leverage our different sets of APIs to send data into Adobe Analytics. So with that, let's talk about each of these different components. We have visuals that can simplify and explain what's complex, but more importantly, we want to think about the different sides of the brain when you're presenting your data. So there's the one side that is fast, it's intuitive, it's emotional. This is where visualizations that are quick to understand are really going to make a difference. And so that's really important that you're always thinking about that when you're telling stories with data. The other side is going to be more slow, more analytical. This is where you have those stakeholders in the room that are poking holes at your assumptions and asking questions. And it's really important that from a narrative perspective that you're speaking to that as well, that you're not just saying this is what the data shows and therefore we're going to do X, but this is why, and this is the data to back it up. And you really need to provide that support from both a data and a visualization perspective. So within Analysis Workspace, we have a number of different ways that you can use visualizations around your data. So for one, you can see here, we've just simply got a few different segments of our customers, gold, diamonds, and platinum, broken out by whatever the most recent, that last touch marketing channel was, and the metric that we're looking at is orders. Now, that's what we're calling very obviously a segmented data table. But using the power of visualizations, you can then expand that into a stacked bar chart. And I'll be walking you through today how to actually build that within Analysis Workspace and when the right time is to use it as well. As you can see within this visualization, you're then able to not only see it broken out across the three different segments of gold, diamond, and platinum, you can also see it trended over time as well. And so when you click on over from there, then we've got a little more details that we'd like to show you. So here's an even more detailed view of your data. Here we're just simply looking at a single metric. We're looking at visits, and we have it broken out in a few different segments. You can see we have platinum, we have mobile, we have abandoned, then we have those three segments that are overlaying each other in somewhat of a Venn diagram status, so like we were looking at earlier. And so we have the ability to migrate that kind of a visualization, which if we were to take a look at it, it's kind of difficult to understand what's going on. There's so many different columns. There's lots of different data sets. It's hard to understand where you're supposed to look and how you're supposed to understand that data set. And so what we have, like I showed just briefly, is this Venn diagram, which will show the overlap between each of the three different segments that we have: platinum and mobile and abandoned and order. So it's a really easy way to use data to understand, to really understand how things are actually overlaid within our data set here. And so I'll show you shortly how to actually build that within Analysis Workspace. Next up, we have something super, super simple that everyone is probably used to within Excel. Is something super simple, is the ability to apply conditional formatting. And so this is something that we've built directly into the table, that our free-form table capability within Workspace is that we can apply some conditional formatting to it. And it's not only available on built-in metrics, but you can also apply it to calculated metrics like we have here. And I'm going to show you some different customization capabilities that you have when you click on what's highlighted here, which is the gear, to adjust the different areas within conditional formatting and how things work there. Next up, we also want to show you some capabilities that we have that's somewhat recent around date comparisons. So if you're looking at orders, for example, for maybe the current month across all these different last touch channels, you can right-click, which if you've never heard me say right-click before, then you've probably never heard me speak ever before, because I say right-click more than anyone. And within the ability to right-click here, you'll be able to do a comparison of time periods, where you can see maybe the current month compared to last month. And we're automatically going to show you the percent change between those two columns. So just a quick way that you can get some additional data pulled into your table that will empower some additional visualizations as well. Next up, we also want to add some depth to tables and graphs using what we call anomaly detection. We'll be getting into this even more into one of our upcoming webinars, which is really focused on data science, where we're essentially running every single trended metric that you have through our anomaly detection algorithms. So we're trying to predict what that data should be if it's a metric like orders, like we have here, trended over time. We're very quickly going to run that through over 25 different predictive algorithms to create that shaded area that you're seeing in the graph all the way on the right. And that shaded area is a list of all the different, of where we expected that data to be, somewhere in that shaded region. And if your metric is outside of that shaded region, then we want to call that out to you proactively, and we do that with just that simple little white dot, recognizing that there was an anomaly detected during that day. Finally, I want to just give you a really high-level view of all the different visualizations that, maybe not all of them, but a number of different visualizations that exist in the world, and a few different ways that we've broken them out. So I like to break them out into 5 different categories. The first one is going to be all the way on the left here. That's your comparison categories. Things like vertical bar charts and horizontal bar charts, and then enabling stacked versions of them and tables and applying conditional formatting to them. They're really good for showing different comparisons within your data. Next up, we have trends. And so this is a really simple set of trending visualizations that you can use, like line charts and vertical bar charts and area charts. And each of those are going to be available to you within Analysis Workspace and are a very easy way to quickly identify how data is trending over time. Next up, then I like to think about another way of showing, using data visualizations to show different parts to a whole. And this is where, again, you can use horizontal and vertical bar charts. You can use stacked bar charts. Another one that it can be valuable is the donut chart, where we're doing a little bit more than just your boring kind of pie chart, but enabling some additional information within that donut chart that you have there. Next up, we have a stacked area chart as well. And the stacked area chart is one that can also do a good job of showing parts to whole, and we'll show you how to build that as well. The next group of them is going to be showing relationships, and this is where we get a little bit more into some advanced visualizations. We've talked about one of them already, which is Venn diagrams, but we also have the ability to show scatter plots or bubble charts as well, which will again show you different relationships between metrics and segments that you apply. Then last and certainly not least, we also have the capability within Analysis Workspace to do histograms. And a histogram is going to show you basically different buckets of your metrics to quickly understand how and edit the way that those metrics are bucketed and sent. So when you're thinking about the way that you're going to tell a story using data, these are all different ways that you can use your visualizations that you have available to you in order to help serve your unique purpose at that time. So think about these and feel free to take a screenshot or whatever you need. It can certainly be helpful. Now next up, I'd like to actually switch on over to Analysis Workspace, and I'm going to share my screen and show you how we're actually able to create these different visualizations within Analysis Workspace live. And so with that, I'd like to share my screen. Great. So let me go ahead and hit share. And from here, we can jump right into Analysis Workspace. And so from Analysis Workspace, when you first log in, you're going to see something somewhat, maybe it's boring within your tool set. And so first of all, if you've never been in it before, again, I highly recommend joining our first Analytics Tuesday webinar and watching the recording for that. The way that you access it, if you've never been in it before, again, in the top left is this Workspace button. And when you get there, you're going to be presented with either a screen like this, which is your blank canvas, or when you click Project Open, it's going to look basically like this, where it's a list of all your different projects. And if you go ahead and click Create New Project, then you'll be taken to this blank canvas that I'm looking at here today. And so within my data set, what I have is all sorts of different dimensions and metrics, segments and time ranges and date ranges that I can apply to my visualizations. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is something just super, super simple. I'm going to take page and I'm going to drag it on over into my table. And when I do that, automatically we're going to assume you want to see occurrences here. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull in page views as my metric and replace occurrences. And then something else that I'm going to do is I've actually created a calculated metric called content velocity. Now this is a pretty interesting calculated metric that I've created. And normally you might think, oh, just page views divided by visits, that's page views per visit, but it's slightly more than that. In that when I look at the definition of this calculated metric that I've created, I've done one thing that's particularly unique, which is rather than just simply pulling in page views divided by visits and getting page views per visit, I've actually applied visit participation. And I've done that by clicking the gear here and setting the allocation to visit participation. That way, my metric is going to show me not only the page views associated with the page that I'm looking at, like this is, but when I pull in my content velocity calculated metric, I'm now going to be able to see, looks like I pulled in the wrong one. Let's pull in the right metric here. I'm actually able to see how much additional page views these pages have driven. So what that's saying is, here I'm looking at search results, which is the #1 viewed page on my website with 36,000-ish page views specifically for that page. In addition, on average, that search results page is driving an additional 9.87 page views across the visit. So that's one way that you can look at your data in sort of a different style. And so what we can do is, since we're talking about visualizations, is I can actually apply that conditional formatting that I was talking about earlier. So I can click my gear here for that particular metric, and instead of showing the bar graph, I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to conditional formatting. And you'll see just when I do that, instantly, now I've got some color coding around the different metrics, around the different bands of values for content velocity. And so this is where things can get really interesting. It's automatically going to call out where there are pages that aren't driving a lot of additional content. And so very quickly I was able to see, here's one that's highlighted in red. That means there's a low number of additional page views being driven from the store locator results page. And maybe that's bad news. But in this instance, you know what? That's probably good news. Because we don't want users to get to the store locator results page and then not find what they're looking for, and they end up looking at a ton of different pages and never getting what they look at. Normally, when a user is accessing the store locator results page, they're hopefully getting what they're looking for. They're looking for a store. So that's not necessarily bad news. But we could continue scrolling on and hopefully find a different answer here as well. And so that's one way that you can just quickly visualize your data in order to find something interesting. Now note that I still have it sorted by page views. So these are the top pages that are accessed, but then since content velocity is a different metric, I can then see my conditional formatting based on that. So I can very quickly find highly accessed pages that are driving either a lot of content or not so much content. Now keep in mind, when I click that gear for conditional formatting, I've got some options. One, we're automatically going to generate what the upper, midpoint, and lower limits are for your conditional formatting. And you can see it's 12.5, 7, and 2 are going to be the auto-generated. That's going to be automatically generated based on whatever metric you are doing your conditional formatting on. Now keep in mind, you can actually customize that. So we could swap that. We could make it different upper limits, maybe a lower upper limit, so it's instead of 12, maybe we've got 11. And then you can see things get a little bit more green because our threshold for the upper limit is a little bit lower. In fact, we can get really crazy. We can actually switch the order of these. So if I wanted to, I could put 7 as my upper limit, 9.5 as my midpoint, and then let's do 11 as my lower limit. And what that does is it swaps. Now it's saying, if we're going to take a look at search results, no results, we're saying, here it was, store locator results. Instead of that being red, it's now bright green. So that can be useful for different metrics, like maybe bounce rate or a metric where when it goes high, that's actually bad news. And when it's low, that's actually good news. So just some additional ways that you can interact with your data set. Now, that actually doesn't make sense for content velocity. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and hit undo. And so when I do that, I can swap on back to the previous view that we had. And keep in mind that you can go to edit undo, and it's going to be one step at a time. Or as you can see within that keyboard shortcut there, you can do a Command Z, or if you're on a PC, a Control Z as well. So lots of nice options to quickly go back and forth within your data sets there. So now I'm back, and this should be, I have a feeling it's going to be the auto-generate. Oh, we can switch it back on over to the auto-generated conditional formatting. And this actually looks the way that we want it to. So we're taking a look at our store locator results. And so we're able to see something interesting. It's not driving a lot of content, which is not necessarily bad news, but maybe we want to continue to inspect that. And so what I can do when I hover over the page is there's this little friendly graph icon that follows my mouse. You can see it on the right here. That icon allows me to just do a one-click and visualize. And so I'm going to click that actually for store locator results. And automatically we're going to see the two metrics associated with store locator results, as you can see, page views for store locator results and content velocity for store locator results. And this is going to be trended over time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, of course, since this is a metric, and of course, since we're trending it, it's automatically going to get run through our anomaly detection, which you can see as that green shaded area that is surrounding my metric. In fact, we can see on the 18th, it looks like there is actually an anomaly. So some interesting data that we're able to see, and that there were actually more page views on the 18th than we actually expected there to be that day. Now, something that you may be noticing and thinking to yourself, well, what's this blue line down here? That's kind of ugly. We're able to see, great, we've got content velocity, but we have no information about that. And that's because there's such a wide difference between the page views. You know, this is in the tens of thousands of page views. And this is, you know, somewhere between like 0 and 10, 0 and 11 for content velocity. And so it doesn't make sense to see both of these on the same axis. So one thing we could do is we could say, you know, we don't care about content velocity. So I can click that metric, and now my blue line goes away. But, you know, that's not really what we're looking to do. We can add it back on in there, and then we've got our blue item. Of course, I could click page views, and now I've got just what I'm looking for. I can see content velocity is now trended over time as well. And I can see my anomaly detection also associated with that. Now, the problem, though, is I want to see both of them at the same time. So what do? I click my friendly little gear button, which is showing me my visualization settings, and I click the checkbox to display a dual axis. And when I do that, now I can see what I'm looking for. On the right, I've got my content velocity axis. On the left, I've got page views, and I can see both of them trended with anomaly detection at the same time. So a super powerful way to just quickly access the data you're looking for. So what else can we do? Now that we're here, we've got some interesting other options. You know, we're clicking on this gear. We're looking at a line chart. What if we were to switch on over to other different visualizations? So we can start at the top. And we want to take a look at, instead of line chart, we can look at an area chart. So it's just a slightly different way of looking at our data set. That may or may not make sense for you. You can also switch on over to an area stack chart, which does definitely not make sense for this visualization, but it's another way to understand your data set. Let's actually switch back on over to the line chart, and there's something else I want to show here. So we still have our dual axis being aligned with both of our metrics, and you'll notice that I still have store locator results clicked within my visualization. Now, if I were to actually click on search results, take a look at what happens within the graph. Note that we're looking at store locator results for this page. I can choose search results now, and that'll refresh this line chart and trend my metrics over time for that particular page. And it looks like it's taking just a second to load up here, which is kind of surprising. And the whole idea, we'll switch on over, there we go. So we've got cart details trended over time, still with my dual axis for both of my metrics with anomaly detection enabled. So just a super fast way that you're able to integrate your table data with your line chart trended over time. Now keep in mind there's a few options that are actually on the top left here. You can manage your data source. So when you click that button, you've got some kind of cool stuff that you can do. First of all, you can lock your selected item. So what that means is when I click lock selected item, that means even though I'm clicking other items or if I'm breaking stuff down by different pages, you'll see the live linking that we were looking at earlier is no longer actually connected to this graph. Now, I think I should be able to hit undo and maybe undo a couple more times here. And so now we're looking at shopping cart details, and it's back to being linked to search results trended over time or home trended over time, etc. And so we're no longer locked with that item. But keep in mind, we also can do a lock selected position. So what that means, maybe let's find one down below. So company information is the 21st item, 21st highest page within the site. Now, if I were to lock that selected position, That means even if I change my date, maybe I'll just look at one day. We'll look at May 9th and hit apply. It's still, did we get unlucky there? I thought that that would be actually, that locked, maybe I didn't actually click the selected position. Anyway, that's the goal of it, is to lock it into directly what's selected. So it's number 21 here. Maybe we'll do a different one. We'll go 17, and we are locked. Should be. Go to a different day. Still company information. It may be kind of goofy because I was doing some undoing and going back to lock selected items, etc. Anyway, that's the goal of that lock selected position. Really, really valuable, especially when you're not goofing around like I am right now. So moving right along, we've got locked items, locked positions. Let's dig in a little further into some other data sets here, or some other visualizations. Another visualization that we were talking about earlier is this concept of a donut chart. And so a donut, you know, it's not maybe the most loved visualization, but it can actually be quite valuable when doing a comparison like the one that we're looking at right now. Maybe we'll take a look just at the search results page, and you know, I think I'm actually going to just drop in so I can delete that and just pull in my donut chart here. And now I can see search results and my content velocity. Let's actually select a few different pages. So now I can see my top 5 pages broken out across my 2 different metrics. So on the left, I have page views. This is my total number of page views and the breakout across each of those top 5 items. And then on the right, I've got content velocity and the breakout across those 5. So just a different way to look at that data for those top 5 items. And this is going to be one metric, and this is going to be another one. Of course, if we were to pull in additional metrics as well, be it searches or visits or revenue or orders, all of that, of course, would just simply create an additional graph as well. So let's see, what other items do we have? We could also switch on over to a bar chart. And so a bar chart here again, now we're taking a look at our top 5 items, since that's what I have selected. You'll notice I was able to select those top 5 just simply by clicking once and then doing a shift click to highlight the top 5. And now that I've done that shift click, I've got the top 5 selected. But again, I'm really unable to look at that content velocity. And here's another time that that second dual axis is going to be really, really valuable. So I've got content velocity is for the blue, and on the right, and then on the left, we've got page views. So a really simple way to view that data as well. So let's dig in a little bit further into some additional visualizations that we have available to ourselves. So let's see, let's actually remove this bar chart and take a look at something more advanced. Everyone loves going more advanced. And so let's get super advanced here. We've got the scatter plot. So I can pull in my scatter plot here, and now I've got some really interesting data available to me within my visualization. So here, I'm actually able to see, and I can actually stretch this out a little bit if I'd like. I'm taking a look at each of these different pages and trying to see across, you know, the axis here, I can see page views. And then from left to right, I've got content velocity. So the higher number of page views being driven, the further to the right it will be. And then the higher number of page views currently being viewed on that page, the higher to the top it'll be. So it's funny, normally you think of that magic quadrant within a scatter plot like this being the top right. But here, I'm actually looking for opportunities where I can drive, you know, more content velocity. If this was a media site, for example, and there were different pages that were driving more content than others, I'd want to make sure that those pages are accessed as often as possible. So instead of analyzing what's in the top right, I'm actually going to analyze what's in the bottom right. So these pages here are going to be pages where there are opportunities in my mind. If I were to hover over one, so here's a kids page. this kids page, if I were to take a look at it, if we were to scroll on down, it's only the 9th highest viewed page within the website. And to me, that sounds like an opportunity because, sure, it's number 9, but it's driving a ton of content velocity. And so maybe there's an opportunity to use that page in an offer or within an A/B test or maybe even on the home page as a homepage banner. I know, based on this super, super simple analysis, that the kids page is going to drive additional page views on the site. So I want to push my visitors to go to that page. So I can do that just simply in a number of different ways by adjusting the content within the site. In addition, I can also see here's a billing information page. That's another one. Seasonal sale, that's a great one. So the seasonal sale has got a decent amount of page views, but it's driving more content velocity than these others that, shopping cart details or search results. It's really high volume of page views, really high content velocity, but, these are the ones that have the opportunity. So really simple way to dig into your data set. Of course, I'm a huge fan whenever you're doing this type of analysis to apply segmentation. And so segmentation is something that we have really focused on within Adobe Analytics in general and made it super simple within Analysis Workspace. So if, for example, we wanted to apply a referrer type of, let's see, maybe came from social, let's make sure that there's actually some data here. Now let's assume there is. So maybe we want to see users that came from search engines. And then when we just simply drag and drop that value as a segment, now we're rerunning every single visualization within my freeform panel here to be aligned with that referrer type equals search engine. And now I can see how things have changed within my visualizations. So I highly, highly recommend applying segments whenever you can. So from that, let's continue digging into some more visualizations. So what if we were to take a look at a Venn diagram? So a Venn diagram is going to be a little bit more complicated. In fact, I think I built one earlier. Let's see what we've got here. So that's our donut charts that we were looking at earlier. And we've got, down here we have a Venn diagram. So very simply what I did is I created a table. And this table is super simple. So let me actually recreate this for you so you can see how I was able to build it. So I'm going to drag and drop this freeform table in here. As my metric, I'm going to use revenue. And then I've got, I'm actually going to remove day as my dimension. Now, just so you can see kind of side by side how this works, maybe we'll even scoot it on over so it's the same size. You can see how I've actually built this. So I've pulled in just a few different segments, and that's something that's cool about Workspace, is you can actually use segments as your dimensions. So if I were to do a search, here's my country United States segment, I can drop that in, and now that segment is actually a dimension. In addition, I can find my device type tablet segment, and keep in mind I don't want to drop it here on top of my previous segment, I want to drop it in at the column header. So I can drop it right on top of the Word segments. And now I've got country United States and device type tablet. And let's see, I've got to find my iPad or iPhone segment as well. And when I drag those in, now I can see 1, 2, 3 different segments that all have revenue broken out. Now the one thing to keep in mind is that there's going to be some revenue within device type tablet that is inclusive of iPad. So there's going to be an overlap there. And of course, some of the revenue coming from these two segments is also going to be within the United States. So what I was able to do is actually create a Venn diagram here that shows that overlap. And I can do that just simply by pulling in, let's see, I'm going to click that guy, and dragging in my Venn diagram. And we can take that same data set, and we've got country United States, we've got device type device type tablet, and then a third one. Keep in mind this maxes out at 3 segments. we pull in our revenue, and now we can see the Venn diagram just like the one below. And the whole idea here is that this visualization that you can see in the table isn't telling the full story. When you look at this, the folks that you're presenting to may not realize about that overlap, whereas here in this Venn diagram, there's a little bit more to understand about your data. Now keep in mind this Venn diagram, you can actually interact with it more than hovering. You can see when I hover over it, the different shaded areas affect the items in the top so that you can see how much revenue we're actually talking about and what's being highlighted. I'm also a fan of course, right-clicking. So this, when I right-click, gives me the opportunity to create a segment from my selection, which is going to automatically pre-populate the combination of this segment. So I can see the country equals United States and the mobile device equals either iPad or iPhone. I can give that a friendly name. It's essentially doing a stack of the segments that I've highlighted. If I were to do the full central area, so it's all three, then I've got my segments that are aligned there. Although that's taking a second to pop up. So that'll be the combination of United States, tablet, iPad, or iPhone. So we can see country equals US, device type equals tablet, and iPad or iPhone. So a really, really simple way to access the data that you're analyzing. So let's dig in a little bit more into some more advanced visualizations that we have. And so if I were to scroll up here, you can see I've got a histogram. Yep. Great.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So in this table, in this table that you showed, right? So I see you created a segment that says country, United States, right? I have one problem with this kind of a segment that I'm currently using. So if you again go back and then break this down by country, ideally, in my understanding, I should see only United States, right?
Correct. Right. So the way that we've defined this segment is that equals United States.
Right. Can you do that quickly, please? Because what I see is when I create, such a segment and then break it down by country, I see all the other countries also listed down out there.
So the way that this segment should be defined is by just simply hits that says our country equals United States at the hit base. And that's important because especially for mobile devices can be moved, and even laptops can as well. So a single visitor could have multiple countries associated with them, which may be why you're seeing what you're seeing. So if I were to pull in countries, let's actually drill in. So countries broken out within that segment, then I'm going to be limited only to United States for that segment. And you should see the same thing as well.
Okay. Got it. That helps. Thanks.
Great. So from there, the next visualization that we were talking about earlier is this capability for bucketing your data set. And so the way that you can create this is using a histogram. So you can drag and drop your histogram, and they're extremely easy to set up. You only have one item to drop in, and that's going to be your metric that you're analyzing. So if we want to pull in revenue as our metric that we're analyzing within our histogram, we can go ahead and click Build. And you can see automatically we're kind of doing something very simple here. Is we're bucketing $1 to $3, $3 to $5, $5 to $7, etc. And the problem there is the majority of our visitors have well over $25 within their bucket, and so or within their cart every single time they make a purchase. And so within our gear, we've got some nice settings. So the big one that we can adjust is what the size of our buckets are. We also have the number of buckets. So right now we have 12. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. That's 12 different buckets. And then we can also say, where do we want to start? Do we want to start at 1, or do we want to start at 10? You can see as soon as I make that change, it's going to update the visualization as well. Let's actually start at 1. We're going to keep the metric buckets to 12, and then we're going to increase the bucket size to 200, just simply because this is a very expensive website where our customers are buying all sorts of really high-priced items. And so you can see each of these different items broken out across those different buckets. We can see 1 to 201, 201 to 401, 401 to 601, etc. So it's a really easy way to understand how your visitors are making purchases or completing whatever your KPI is across the time. Keep in mind that since segmentation is used to define these buckets, you're actually limited somewhat within your histogram in that you can only use non-calculated metrics here. And you can actually see that by pulling in the Show Data Source here. So when you click Show Data Source, it's actually pretty powerful. You can see how we're actually creating these different visualizations. So you can see our metric is just simply unique visitors, and then our segments that we're creating, we're simply saying for the visitor, revenue is greater than or equal to 1, and revenue is less than 201. For the next one, we can see 201 is defined as revenue is greater than or equal to 201 and less than 401, etc. So it's kind of fun to peel back the covers and truly understand how we're able to create this visualization and what the underlying data set is. We can go ahead and hide that as well. So lots and lots of capabilities there in terms of visualization. So the last couple of pieces that I'd like to walk you through are some additional visualizations. One of them is this bullet chart. And so I'm actually going to, let's see, we can head back on into our original free form panel that we're looking at. We've got our scatter chart here. I'm going to start with our freeform table and pull in a bullet. So a bullet is super, super simple. What it allows us to do is kind of create, if you're familiar with the old concept of targets within Omniture, reports and analytics, that's the goal of a bullet chart. So we've got, let's see, we're taking a look at all page views. Let's focus just on search results. And we can click on into the goal, or I'm sorry, into the gear here to define what our options are. So our high goal, let's see, is going to be, let's go for 50,000. Our mid goal is going to be 40,000. And then our low goal is going to be 20,000. Did I do that wrong? No, there we go. Oh, I did do that wrong. So we've got 50,000, 40,000, and 20,000. And then what that's going to do is show just extremely visually, extremely simply, you've got your low area, your mid goal, and your high goal. And then the green is going to be where you actually are. That's why we're at 35,946. The problem, though, is that when you switch on over to shopping cart details, for example, your same goals are going to be aligned. So you still got 20, 40, and 50 for this bullet graph. So what I like to do is click on search results here, and then we can lock on that selected item. So then even if I continue and click on other ones, my target is going to be the same. In fact, we can even maybe put a couple of different bullet graphs right on top of each other or next to each other. Now we're looking at home. Maybe we want to do shopping cart details. And we're going to minimize, shrink that down a little bit, set our settings instead of what we had before. Our numbers are going to be a little bit lower. And here we can say 40,000, 25,000, and 10,000. And then we can see, now we've got a target here as well. We can go ahead and lock our selected item. We can hide this if we need to. And then we give it a friendly name, which is our search results page view target and our cart detail page view target. If we need to, of course, we can adjust them any way we need to. So lots of capabilities in terms of that visualization for bullet graphs and just a high-level view as to what's possible within the tool. Let's see, are there any other items that I haven't gone over? Well, there's a couple of really simple ones that we'll do, which are summary number and summary change. So we're looking earlier. Let's expand our there we go. We can drill on down, and let's take a look at summary change. We can just simply see the percent change between page views and content velocity, which doesn't make a lot of sense to look at that differentiator. So maybe we want to see instead, just looking at page views, we can right-click, and now we want to see compared time periods. So this is what I was talking about earlier, which is very quickly see all the different time periods. And this is going to be context it's aware, so that you're currently looking at a month's worth of data. We want to compare it to the prior month's worth of data. So when I click prior, instead of looking at June, now I'm looking at May, and I can see that comparison for every single line item within my table here, as well as my percent change. And so now I can see there's that 9.46% associated with search results. It's aligning directly with this percent change here as well. And I can, of course, click through and see all the different items. And, of course, it's going to be related to whatever I've selected. So maybe we want to keep that with shopping cart details, so we're going to lock that selected item. I can very similarly pull in a summary number, which is just going to be our high-level count. So that's going to be 27,414. This is not the most exciting visualization that you can think of, but you know, if you've got a dashboard that has a high-level view of what's going on your site, it can still be valuable. Let's see, so the only other item that I'd like to walk you through is the ability to also add some text. This is where we've enabled you to have a little more of a dialogue within your workspace project. So you can say, check this out, summary change on cart details looks great. Click my checkbox, and now when I hit save, and maybe I want to share that over to someone else within my organization, I can share my project to anyone within the org, and I can say, oh, you know what, I'm going to share that on over to Susan, and now she'll have access to it as well. And she'll be able to also edit and interact with this text and dig into what I'm showing her. So with that, I just want to quickly show you that we also have some pathing capabilities as well. So pathing is something that I think we walked through on the previous webinar. There's lots of great YouTube videos as well that show how to use them, but beware that your pathing capabilities at the visit or visitor level that allow you to mix and match dimensions as well as right-click and trend and create segments is all possible there. And then finally, we also have cohort tables. So cohort tables are a really powerful way to understand what's happening across segments and across metrics. So maybe we're going to say how many days between, let's say, visit equals number 1, so the first visit, and we're going to say order. So we can drag in order is greater than or equal to 1. And when we build that, we're now taking a look through all of your different data sets to identify where your visitors fit in. The inclusion metric is saying it was their very first visit. How many days between that first visit and their very first order? And we're making that visually accessible to you so you can see across from June 1st all the way to June 15th how many days it took between them. So we can see you've got 3,604 visits that occurred on the 1st. 7 of them purchased that day, 4 purchased 2 days later, etc. Now keep in mind, you can actually right-click here as well. So if you're curious about these 10 visitors that took 4 days to make a purchase that first visited on the 2nd, you can right-click, create segments from the cell. You've got the day equals June 2nd, and everything is automatically going to be populated for you. Saying 4 days later on the 6th, there actually was an order. So a really easy way to not only learn about your visitors, but also create a segment to interact with them. So we've got 5 minutes left, and so with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and hit pause on my share and head on into our questions and answers. And so let me dig into those and see if there are any in particular that we want to get answered. So let's see. So the first question that I have here is around conditional formatting. Will that auto-update when you save a workspace? And the simple answer to that is it will remain in place when you hit save. Now, if the data updates, which means you've changed the date or you've applied a segment, then that conditional formatting will actually update based on the new data set. And that's going to continue to be auto-generated based on the data set that's populated there. Good question. Next question we have is, can we share the logic in the content velocity metric? And that's funny. We actually got that exact same question earlier. Hopefully the walkthrough that I had of that metric was helpful. And it's something, you know what, we've had so many questions on it. I'm happy to actually take a screenshot of it, and then immediately following this webinar, I'm going to tweet that out. And my Twitter handle is my first name and then my last name. So you can find that super quickly, and if you weren't able to take a screenshot of it as I was walking through the calculation, feel free to do so there. Let's see, another question on that same calculated metric, and then the next question that I have is around, can you sort by the dimension alphabetically? And so that's a really good question, and right now that's not going to be possible. In fact, I just want to double check and make sure that isn't something that's possible today. It's something that we've discussed internally, and right now that's not actually going to be possible. However, you will be able to drag and drop if you're using segments. So that's one way. If you're looking at just a few different pages, you could create a hit-based page segment, for example, and you could sort them that way. If you're looking to sort 1,000 different pages, though, that's not going to be very useful. Let's see, so another question on content velocity. How is an anomaly defined? And so that's a really great question that we're going to get really detailed into in our next webinar, which is how an anomaly is defined. We've got a number of different questions, and I want to make sure that we have a few minutes for you to get to the polls. So I think I'm actually going to hit pause there on answering questions. I really appreciate the questions and the interactions, and for any that we didn't get to, I'm going to respond via email on questions. From there, we can go straight on over into the polls. Thank you again for joining. Please, we really appreciate the feedback, and see you at the next Analytics Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.